The verse of the day is 2 Corinthians 12:8-10. And it says, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Today's verse, I would say, is up there with my life verse, Romans 12:2, because I've seen today's verse happen in my life time and time again, and is actually how I've discovered Jesus to be real. In my weakness, he's made me strong. He's used my greatest insecurity to become my greatest superpower, because when we rely on him in that place, he gets to be strong there. I've shared this before, but you guys, my greatest fear is my voice. My whole life was saying something wrong, thinking I was stupid, thinking I didn't have anything valuable to say. I did not know how to articulate my own thoughts because I didn't even know what my thoughts were. I was so stuck in people-pleasing and insecurity. And God used all of my greatest weaknesses for good. Most of my life, I thought a lot of the things about me were personality, but it was just pain waiting to be turned into purpose when I pursued Jesus and his power. Because that's what he does. He uses our pain, turns it into purpose with his power. And that's available for you. Today's verse should be a massive wave of hope for you, that if you have a weakness, that's great, because you get to be strong there when you rely on Jesus there. And I think when we're talking about fear and anxiety and battling these things, battling our mind and our thoughts, that means we feel weak, right? When we feel fear and anxiety, our mindset and our body is in a state of weakness because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel very strong and confident and great to be battling those things. So those are actually just avenues that we can see God's power shine the more we bring them to him. If I've learned anything in my walk with God, it's he will put a dream in you that is bigger than you. And the beautiful thing about that is we have to rely on his power in order for that to come to pass. And so when it comes to anything I've done, I have not felt capable to do anything that I've done. I have not had the right plan or strategy or understanding. It's all been God, because I've had to rely on him literally every minute of this walk. And sometimes I'm wondering if I'm doing it right. Often. But those are those moments where we remember it's not us, it's God in us. And then we get to be really clear about anything coming from our life being because of him. And then it brings him glory, because it shows people, yeah, God is pretty cool at transformation, at heart transformation, at miracles and wonders, and changing our lives and changing our mind. His power actually changes us and sets us free. And here's the evidence of it, because it wasn't me. I used to be like this, and now he's made me like this. I'm not perfect, but he's done a work in my life that I can now proclaim and testify to his goodness. Paul said 3 different times he begged God to take it away. How often do you and I beg God, Lord, help me with my fear, get rid of my anxiety? I don't know about you, but I'm all the time, most days. And I think it's easy for the enemy to get into our head and say, oh, because you're experiencing fear and anxiety, God doesn't love you. You're clearly opening up a door. You're clearly doing something wrong, which makes us feel like we're stuck in this reality, which then is how you fall into depression, because you feel stuck and unable to get out of it, which of course you're going to feel depressed, because if you feel stuck in your reality of fear and anxiety, that's not a very hopeful feeling. And so instead, we have to look at it through the lens of, oh, my fear and anxiety is an avenue to see God shine through me, rather than condemning me and allowing condemnation to talk to me, because that's not God's voice. That's the enemy's voice. God will convict us, but it's always connected to hope. He will highlight an area where we can change and grow, but it always has hope and love attached to it, because he knows we can grow out of it and turn from it and become better people from it. But the enemy will condemn us. He will say that you are your mistakes, you are your sin, which is why we feel shame and guilt and condemnation. So we have to remember that that's not God's voice. We have to remember that when we feel fear and anxiety, it is simply a massive sign to see God's power shine in that place, to be dependent, to turn my attention to Jesus and say, Lord, remind me who you are. Remind me you're with me in this moment. Remind me that you go before me and that your power is within me, that I don't go anywhere by myself, and that your power defeats all evil. So if I'm feeling any sort of evil in my mind or attack on my mind, I get to rely on the person who has power over it. And I'm his friend. He lives in me. So that means I get to continue to do whatever I can to keep my eyes on Jesus. And we would think that if we are constantly depending on God and praying for freedom in our mind from fear and worry and anxiety, that God would give it to us, right? Because he's a good father. And so we might wonder, why am I still struggling? Why do I have these things and these struggles and these tensions? And that's understandable because we don't want to deal with that, right? But God knows so much more than we do. And I can't tell you guys how many times I've been like, God, why am I still struggling with unworthiness? Why do I have anxiety here? Why am I fearful here? But instead of asking why, because we can get caught up on wanting to know everything, and sometimes knowing too much isn't good. We just have to focus on, how am I going to work through it? Okay, I'm feeling fear, worry, and anxiety. God's power is made perfect in my weakness. I am going to lean on him every single time I feel weak, because that's all I got, and that's your best shot. And he's going to use it for good. You're going to start to see his power shine in ways you never thought possible. You're still going to have weak moments, but we're going to have weak moments until the day we die. We have to remember that. Our weakness is an avenue for God to shine, and we are vessels of God's love to shine through. So if we were perfect and didn't have weakness, God wouldn't have area to move because we would think we're good. But these are avenues that keep us close to him, dependent on him. Something about us as human beings is we are most often led by feelings. And God is always trying to teach us how to have faith over our feelings. Something I have learned in my journey of battling fear, anxiety, worry, depression, unworthiness is you can have such a bad mindset one day and feel heaviness and depression and what am I doing with my life? And then 3 hours from then, you can feel like a completely different person. The next day, you could feel like a completely different person. The amount of times my mindset has been flipped upside down in the matter of hours or days, and I feel 100% different within. I feel joy, peace, patience. I feel the fruit of the Spirit. I feel excited and motivated. I feel completely different than I did maybe days ago or hours ago. It reminds me how spiritual our experiences are and how we just have to trust God's timeline, that he's teaching us something about faith over feelings. He's teaching us how to have peace that surpasses all understanding. He's teaching us how to have joy within, no matter what our external reality looks like. And that's what I've learned. Every time I'm depressed or fearful or anxious, and then days later I might feel completely different and I might feel free and hopeful, that is a very clear example that this is an internal battle because nothing in my external reality has changed. And so we have to just learn to just love ourselves in the midst of our humanness, in the midst of the fear, worry, anxiety, and weakness, and see it as an area to see God shine, as an area to be powerful. Your greatest weakness is your greatest superpower when we rely on the person that has all power. And so be encouraged today that your weakness is an avenue for strength. Even Paul had to fight weakness. He had a thorn in his side that he always had to fight, but it kept him dependent. And if you know your need for God, you can be radically used for him. And so that should be an excitement and an area of hope for you. Keep leaning on God in your weakness because he will shine in that very place. Okay?